Oh man. Well, I met you what, like 2, 3 years ago?
Think so. I think it was mostly a lot of guys knew you, and you showed up at one of the meetings. And I had been on a couple of those meetings, but I didn't really. So I just knew you then from kind of how you acclimated to Earth,
LA.
Wind, and Flower.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta s
So whenever that was.
I gotta say out of all the people I've met, don't take this the wrong way. I mean, it's a compliment, but you give the best hugs. Like,
Oh, why would I take that negatively?
I don't know, some people could be weirded out, but I feel my rib cage like compacting. Like you have a upper body like, oh,
A long time ago, I made a commitment after talking with a couple people, and I think it was at a men's retreat. But it was like, no more baby burps, no more side hugs. If you're gonna hug somebody, hug them. If you care enough to hug them, then hug them enough to let them know you care.
mm. It feels like it's coming like from the heart and then out of the arms. And it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and then there was that thing that Sonny started doing,
What's that?
which was heart to heart.
Okay.
Instead of hugging this way. And then I've got some friends in Minnesota that do the same thing. So most people, like, we come in like this,
Mhm.
right? But if you come in like this, then you're heart to heart. It's a Native American thing.
Interesting. Because I know
Yeah.
like Italians, they go in, you kind of do that when you do the kiss on each cheek. Hello. So,
Yeah.
is that part of healthy masculinity?
I mean, is that a part of healthy masculinity? I think what's a part of healthy masculinity is just being comfortable expressing your affection for men and women equally, and not letting homophobia, and not letting your own stiffness, not letting your own fear, not letting your own, stuff that you have in your head get in the way. To me, that's what healthy masculinity. And so, I mean, the essence of healthy masculinity is awareness of the inner narrative and how it limits us, right? The narrative about being a man, the rules we follow internally, and how those limit us. And the more we can be aware of them, then the more we can do something different if that's what we want. You want to hug guys? Hug guys. If you don't hug guys, it doesn't mean you're not a healthy man, but it might be something you want to look at.
Yeah.
If you don't tell the people in your life you love them, it might be something you want to look at, But it's not a judgmental place. It's much more about consciousness.
Yeah. So we should set this up. I mean, what qualifies you to give an opinion, an idea of healthy masculinity? Because I know you as a friend, I know you as a fellow, and then I see on the professional side, you're an author, you're a speaker, you're a trainer. So give viewers, followers, people watching this little
Well,
context if they don't know you already.
I mean, every man, I guess, in some way is qualified, right, to share his experience and to talk about what it means to him to be a man. But if you've spent the last 30 years thinking about it, talking about it, writing about it, and doing your own work about it, you probably have something at least different to say, and perhaps a little bit better way of articulating it. Certainly, for me, it's very thoughtful. It comes from that place, like you said. I've got 7 publications that have all been focused on gender and trauma. I do talks and trainings all over the country, and I've done them internationally over the years. And I listen to men. My first 2 books were all about interviewing men and listening to them and hearing, their experience. And I've listened to men since those books, whether it's interviewing men kind of in a formal process or just working with men professionally or personally.
Yeah. How long have you been married to your wife?
23 wonderful years.
And you have how many kids?
One.
One. Okay.
One. Amazing Grace.
Oh, That's beautiful. That's beautiful, man. So we're on the board of the Center for Healthy Masculinity, the nonprofit together. And it just so happened our first symposium at UCLA, May 1st, was the same day as this first activation I was doing with Check on Your Teammates here in Los Angeles. So that was a big day. And so you actually came out this past weekend to our Check on Los Angeles private dinner. And I appreciate that. What is your feel for the movement? What's your idea? What did you take away from that experience?
I think more than ever, many, many men are looking for something to help them. I think, I mean, people, women in particular, have been looking for something to help men for a long time. But it's only truly helpful. It's only can truly catch on if men want it, if men desire it, if men go after it. And, so I think the Center for Healthy Masculinity, like we're really focused on men's health, specifically in the areas of mental health, addiction, shame, and trauma. Now, I'm a big believer, my bias is that those four things drive much of the suffering of our world. Like if you could wave a magic wand and get rid of those four things, we would have a very, very different world. And men would be very, very different as well. And we really appreciate you being on the board. I mean, it's been great to have you on the board. And you were on the board before you were a part of Check on Your Teammates. And then you get this Check on Your Teammates, which is such an obvious synergy, and so when I think of like what you all are doing, it's like the Center for Healthy Masculinity, I'm committed to that mission and I'm committed to the name. At the same time, it's not necessarily going to draw all men in. Something like Check on Your Teammates, it's pretty neutral. It's pretty powerful. Actually, it's not neutral, but it's neutral from the sense of like there's no reason for a man to feel defensive about that, right? I mean, he might, but like there's nothing threatening about that. Just even the title, the Center for Healthy Masculinity, could feel a little bit scary or threatening for some men because it's like, what's there? Because all men know they're carrying pain.
Sure.
They just aren't necessarily as aware of it and what exactly it is. Check on Your Teammates makes it collaborative, makes it we're all looking out for one another. And the beautiful aspect of it is it's teammate. And anybody who's played team sports knows like those are your people. Check on your teammates. How are your teammates doing? Because if one member of the team is not doing well, the whole team suffers. Yeah. And so I really like that. I appreciated the dinner. I appreciated meeting some of the folks. I think there's great opportunities for collaboration between our two organizations. And I think men are really looking for safe ways to let people know they're not okay.
Yeah, I agree. So you mentioned something, and I think it's a common idea that Check on Your Teammates, we COIT for short, is just for athletics and sports teams. Really, it's overarching, and it's like our teammates in life, like our families, our partners, our spouses, our colleagues, our managers and supervisors, our employees, our assistants. So part of this for us, the way beyond just the hats and the t-shirt and the sweatshirts, we have a e-learning module coming out. And so what that is, it's creating a culture of care in workplaces. And so it's mental health literacy. Now, when I look at your website, I see people leaving feedback, like you help women too. that are CEOs? Like, can you offer some experience on that and maybe how something like checking in on your teammates, whether they be colleagues or employees, could be beneficial to not only businesses, but to individuals?
Yeah, I mean, I don't per se work with women.
Okay.
It's not my lane. However, recently I have published two curricula for women with a female author. So we took our Amazing Dads curriculum and we published Amazing Moms. We took our Healing Men's Pain curriculum and we published Healing Women's Pain. And we had the same female author, and she's great, Dr. Sophia Murphy. But if any women were like to come to me or talk to me, I would have like an opening conversation and share some thoughts and stuff, and then quickly send them to the appropriate resource. I don't try to be all things to everyone, and I try to really have my lane. As relates to businesses, as relates to all these different places. I mean, it's just the whole idea of, well, I just sent out a newsletter because this is Men's Mental Health Month, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's Pride Month and it's Men's Mental Health Month. Two incredibly important, experiences that have a huge amount of overlap as well, frankly. And one of the things I said in the newsletter is, let's get over the idea that mental health is somehow a small percentage of men. Mental health is all men. All men have mental health challenges. It's not an issue of whether they're there or not. It's the degree to which they're there. Maybe you have invasive thoughts. Maybe you have stress. Maybe you have anxiety. Guess what? That's mental health. Because the things you do to care for that and take care of that are parts of mental health resources, or parts of the ways that you can kind of, mitigate that. Now, it might go all the way to like somewhere along that continuum of like a 7 or an 8, where you're getting more severe mental health issues, where you're getting things like bipolar 1 and you're getting, but we look at that part of the continuum and think that that's mental health. Mental health is 0 to 10. And if we could start doing that, there'd be no shame,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we'd remember we're all in this together. It's not like, oh, he's got mental health issues. It's like, oh, what are your particular mental health challenges? And there's no shame. There's still way too much shame, and there's way too much stigma.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the that's one of the things that we have to really help to get rid of, to eliminate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's part of our movement, is making it okay to not be okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, a big part of this for us on a business to business level is not only having our hats, but on the side, it will say Center for Healthy Masculinity or that company's logo. And when the CEO, a supervisor, a team leader walks in wearing that on Casual Dress Friday, it kind of can like decompress the room and be like, okay, it's okay to let somebody know I had an off week, and that's probably showing up in my performance. But that should not risk someone's job, because we're human. Like, we do have off times, or we go through things outside of work. So that's really what it's all about. But for you, I think what I notice a lot is conviction. Like, you don't just run up on writing 7 books about a specific topic because it comes out of nowhere. So I wonder if you were to take me back to before you were an author, before maybe, we got into the meeting that we met at, who would you see? Who probably needed to be checked on and given some words of encouragement or suggestion, advice? Like, where is all this coming from?
Well, my gosh, that's a big question, right? I mean, because what is in somebody's past that creates the work that they do? What is it that drives that? I mean, I'll just give you the quick kind of the kind of top 5.
Because I know you've mentioned at one point you were a wild driver. You mentioned some driving issues.
I definitely was a road rager.
Okay.
I was a road rager, and I am not anymore, and it feels so much better to not be. Um, I Here, I'll say a couple things. So I grew up in a violent alcoholic home on a golf course in Maryland. So we weren't wealthy. We were we were the poor people in the wealthy neighborhood, like the poor family in the wealthy neighborhood. But we were fine. Um, it it I was just having some therapy yesterday, and it was and part of the therapy is it's a whole big thing on attachment. And my therapist was like, my therapist and I were both talking, and it was like I just talked about a couple of things, and it was like, wow, like it just kind of hit me at a deeper level how insane my home was,
Mm.
and how normalized that insanity had become. A really significant thing that happened for me was when I was like eighth grade, ninth grade, really ninth grade, went to a private boys' high school, but I wasn't growing. And ultimately, at the end of my sophomore year, I got treated with growth hormone to grow. I was very short. I was very small. And the interesting thing is, everybody has their experience. I had gone from being like the most athletic, the most popular, to like literally the lowest, link on the chain of high school. I got put in trash cans, stuffed in lockers. I was bullied. It was brutal. And that was humiliating, that growth hormone aspect. It was compounded by the fact that I had an alcoholic father who teased me, and so it was just very painful. Now, the reason I share that is because that planted some very significant ideas about masculinity in my head. And when I was in college, and well on my way to my own alcoholism, actually, I was already there. Um, and I took a class on gender, and the professor, we were talking about women, women, women. It was really the sociology of women course.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, gosh, there's all this people like talking about women and da da da. I was like, does anybody look at this stuff for men? And she said, I don't know. Why don't you go check it out? And it became my senior thesis. And then I did get sober. And then at the same time that I got sober, I had just been immersed in this whole conversation around gender. And this is 32 years ago. And so when I went to my first recovery meeting and a guy came up and tried to hug me, I was like, what is going on? Why is this guy trying to hug me? And then I started listening to how men were talking and expressing themselves. And remember, 32 years ago, our society has been shifting toward that kind of masculinity that was in those recovery meetings in our larger society over 32 years. It has been shifting toward that. We're not there, and it's probably kind of bifurcated, at least as far as men that do that.
Mm-hmm.
But that started it. And so I got sober. I went to grad school. My graduate studies were on the social construction of masculinity in the culture of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I did that by interviewing men. And I only asked one question: how have your ideas of being a man changed since getting into recovery? And what do you think the number one answer was?
Probably significantly.
You would think, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would think.
I mean, sitting in a room, hugging guys, talking to another guy about stuff other than sports and news, asking for help. I mean, like, there's so many things that come to mind. Do you know what the number one answer was? Not only when I did my master's research, but when I wrote A Man's Way Through the 12 Steps, I interviewed men and I asked the same opening question. And resoundingly, the number one answer was they haven't.
Mm.
Because it was invisible to them.
Mm.
They weren't thinking about gender. They weren't thinking about masculinity. They were thinking about recovery. They were thinking, I was like, so wait a second. Before you got into recovery, you used to go around hugging other men? And they're like, no. And I said, you used to ask for help? No. I said, so what do you think about that and being a man? And then they would get it. Then their eyes would open, and then it would kind of create this whole conversation. And I definitely was leading the witness, so to speak, right? But it was fascinating to me. And I'll be honest with you, Eric Robert, I would say some of that, it's not denial, but some of that invisibility continues to this day. And why that's significant is when men are really conscious of who they are as men, then they pay attention to all the inner scripts that they're following. But when men are just thinking about, oh, I'm a man in recovery, then they pay attention to some of it, and then they don't really pay attention to other aspects of it. And so you could be in a situation where, like, you hear these wonderful shares by these guys who then all of a sudden turn around and say something really sexist or homophobic or racist. And you're just kind of like, wait, what? You know? Or they just do something really like hyper macho kind of thing. And I'm like, you know, and I'm not trying to say that judgmentally. I'm just trying to say that's what happens if you're not fully reflective of the man you want to be, whether it's in recovery or any other situation. And so, that's how I've tried to incorporate it into my life. And I have failed. You know, the last thing I'll say to your question, so much of the greatest parts of my work have come out of my greatest failures, my greatest mistakes, my greatest struggles to be a man. You know, like there came a point when I started having some confidence about my masculinity, because it had been ground, you know, into the ground, beat into the ground with the growth hormone and the bullying, and I was just very passive and afraid. And then I went to college and I started hooking up with women, but I didn't know how to treat them or respect myself or them and all that sort of stuff. And that was like the beginning of starting to get some confidence. But then I got longer into sobriety and then started doing even deeper work. And then I was real confidence. And then I went the opposite. It was like I was making up. And I don't know if I was a dick, but I embraced much more of the negative narratives of masculinity than I ever could have imagined myself having done when I was in high school.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, there's a coping mechanism, there's a survival aspect, there's a social hierarchy. I feel like gender studies was one of the most impactful and memorable classes I took in college. And I remember going in because I didn't like how the professor framed it, how we were going to break down these tropes, these archetypes throughout Disney movies. And I'm like, this is what I'm paying for. By the end of it, I was so happy that she framed it that way because it made it so much more digestible. And I'll never forget, I think there are about 5 different roles that are assigned to women in the workplace, like the mom, the vixen, the bitch, I think kind of like a sex object type thing. Maybe that's the vixen. So, but when I turned the page, there was nothing like that for men. There was no breakdown on the different. It's just, you are a man at work. You are a man in society. And I think that's where it's like, well, I can't, how do I reach out for help? Who who do I talk to, especially if I'm not an alcoholic or drug addict that's gotten sober and
Right.
has that. So I think it's really impactful that the work that you do, you know, it goes beyond just that. Like that's almost innate. And you and I, one thing I was reminded of, I think starting last year, we kind of like fought to get to know each other because I was busy with something and I'd call you and then like you called me. And then finally I was walking towards a meeting and I'm like, I don't want to miss this call again. Because I think we both, I definitely wanted to get to know you just because of your presence in the room and the way guys respect you, but also the way that you interacted with me from the first start. And I didn't know anything about all of this, but yeah. So I just wonder, you know, could checking on someone, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a text, whether it's a gratitude list, or inviting someone, hey, do you want to join me for lunch today on our break? Do you think that that could have a ripple effect or an impact uh, for men, like mental health or healthy masculinity?
It's everything. It's everything. I mean, I think one of the scripts, right, is isolation,
Mm.
because to reach out to someone. So there's kind of three things, right? The first is asking for help. The second is accepting help, right? And then the third is offering help to others. And the asking for help is hard enough. But then the accepting help is its own thing. But could there be a ripple effect of men just checking on each other and how that goes? I mean, any man who has the experience of having a man check on him knows how it feels. There's a visceral feeling to that.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you want to pass that on? Unless you're really stuck in your own suffering. Why wouldn't you want to? Gosh, that was so nice of you to call. I was thinking of you too. Gosh, that was great. Hey, thanks for that text to just see if I was okay. Yeah, man, after that meeting, it was just really intense. Really appreciated you just following up. Thanks for that phone call, man. It was really great. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah.
Thanks for setting up a meal. And look, at the end of the day, the person who's reaching out is the one who benefits the most, because you just don't know where that's going to go.
Mm.
The gift is of being of service and letting go of where you think that has to lead, because having worked in behavioral health for a long time, like, you don't know who's going to get sober. You don't know who's going to stay sober. You don't know who's going to die by suicide. You don't know. I mean, it's like, but guess what? There are going to be those who do. That's the cold reality. There are going to be those who relapse and die. There are going to be those who never quite get this thing. There are going to be those who take their own lives. There are going to be those who try to take their own lives and survive. Whatever. It's far beyond my comprehension how all of that works. And so my job is to show up as best as possible for the men and the women that God puts in my life.
Yeah.
And that's it, right?
Yeah. I really, this is eye-opening for me because the focus, the concentration on masculinity, it has these huge implications because of, I mean, would you agree, of a patriarchal structure of society? Because men are in so many positions of power, the more of us that are healthy, the more of us that are normalizing actually being a little bit more vulnerable with trusted friends, family members, checking in on one another, that could benefit everyone else as a whole. Women, people of different races, people with different sexual identities. I mean, do you think so? I feel like
it could. It doesn't have to. That's been one of the problems, right? And I've been fairly outspoken about this in certain kind of situations, I guess you could say. And I'll go back to it's so interesting because people love kind of either or stuff. They get very stuck in either or thinking. And so, for instance, the vast majority of gender studies programs that are out there are really about women.
Hmm.
and about non-binary and about trans, and they don't tend to look at men.
Mm.
And it's like it's this invisible sort of um, block. Like we don't need to look at men. Men get all the attention. Men have all the power. Men all the, and it's just kind of like, how can you be so short-sighted? And so in the both and, it's like, well, let's put it this way. There's been plenty of patriarchal values that have continued to exist in things like the 12-step culture, even though men are getting well.
Hmm.
So it's not guaranteed. If we're not conscious about it, if we're not saying, hey, checking on your teammates also means at a certain point when we start to get real with each other, like we get real with each other and that we draw some lines. People are so afraid these days, I think, they think compassion means not confronting people. They think compassion means not drawing lines with behavior. The most compassionate people in my life were the ones who were willing to say, I love you, Dan, and that is not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I just had a conversation like that this week, and I wasn't on the fun end of that. I was the one getting sat down, but it prompted me to follow up with other people that were affected. And I know like that is growth. And if I don't have those moments, then I'm staying stagnant and I'm comfortable and I'm okay, but there's no change in there. And if I really want to get to where I believe I deserve to be, then it's going to take those uncomfortable talks. I also wonder with, working with clients, friends, fellows, checking on teammates, whoever that may be, to me, there seems to be this accrued interest that happens, like a snowball effect. Like we may not really get down to the brass tacks of everything on that first phone call or the first time we hang out and go to a game together or we watch, the World Cup or something. But over time on those calls consistently, we start to learn each other's quirks, what your humor's like, what my humor's like. And then the story starts to unfold. Have you experienced that a bit?
100%. I mean, we've all got our armor, we've all got our defenses, we've all got our best face that we want to put forward. And then, slowly it can drop down and things get more real and more real. And one person takes a risk and says something, and then the rest of the room or the group or whatever can drop down. Or maybe it's an individual relationship. I mean, I'm married 23 years. My wife and I are still discovering layers of intimacy it's just nuts. And I'm like, are we like ahead of are we ahead of the average couple? Are we behind? Like, holy crap. I mean, like 23 years in. And I can honestly say I love her more, feel more connected, and appreciate her more than ever.
Before we wrap this up on that note, a lot of my friends, regardless, straight, gay, bi, open, black, white, Latino, Asian, especially here in Los Angeles, but even the ones in New York City, they're having a hard time finding a partner. And a lot of it is based on this kind of vetting with their income or the type of car that they drive, because those status symbols seem to represent stability and the people that they want to date want to be taken care of. Um, what, when I check in with someone like that, do you have any suggestion? Because it could be frustrating. I mean, I see guys moving. I see guys kind of throwing their phones or, to the guy that's not married, that's single, that's 36 years old like me. How can you help them?
Well, I mean, I think there's different ways, right? I mean, I do coaching around like relationships, and I do coaching around just masculinity. And I think as a man kind of gets to know and love himself, and it's even like hard for men to talk about loving themselves because it just sounds, we put so many pejorative terms to that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it, it's pretty critical, right? that you at least you have some kind of respect for yourself. Fine, you don't have to love yourself. How about we start with just respecting yourself? And I think what it comes down to is we've still done such a poor job of helping people understand how to navigate intimacy. Like, what is their attachment style? How do they respond to conflict? All of those skills are still not taught in school. I had really hoped when my daughter was in school that she would get some of that. I even wrote to the principals of every school that she was at, asking them to do something like that, offering my help. Oh, we have a curriculum for that. Oh, yeah, do you? I talked to my daughter about that curriculum. So what's my point? My point is people are going into relationships, and now more than ever, as disconnected from themselves, disconnected emotionally. So like you get around this person and they got all this stuff coming up and you don't even realize it. And you start to interact with this person. So your job as a person looking to find someone is to be clear about what you want, what's acceptable to you, and what's not. You want to just get laid and have fun for a while? Great. Chances are that loses its attraction. You want to get into a relationship? Great. Know how you're going to show up and know what skills you have and don't have to do it well. And this is sadly, especially to men, but not solely. Women tend to very much overestimate their relational skills, and as a result, that can be part of the barrier that they have in true intimacy. I always like to say, men tend to be very afraid of intimacy, and women in heterosexual relationships tend to spend a lot of time complaining about the men as their barrier to intimacy. And once you get a true partnership, both people are willing to take responsibility for themselves. So if you're in a relationship with somebody who wants to blame you or somebody who wants to say you're the problem, ask yourself if you're, first, if you really care about the person, I always recommend couples counseling, because couples counseling helps to bring in the skills we never got and helps both people to be heard. But if your partner is just not willing to do the work, either, as a couple and for themselves, then you have to ask yourself how important it is for you to be with somebody and miserable versus alone, and maybe miserable, but probably less miserable than in a relationship that's just not working.
Yeah.
So that's just some kind of quick and dirty ideas.
I was just asking for a friend, not for me.
Yeah, of course. Oh, I know. I'm aware of that friend.
Man, I really, really appreciate this. I know the whole team, the Coit team, definitely appreciates it. And, I'm just grateful to be working with you, not only, on this front, you helping us out, but also with the Center for Healthy Masculinity. And, it's cool. I get to just cross paths with you, on a more personal level. So much, much appreciated. Where can people find information on you if they want to read your books?
Thank you for that. I mean, one, thank you again. And I really genuinely look forward to what we can do together.
You're going to officiate my wedding. Don't worry.
And there's a couple ways people can find me. I mean, I have my own work, and that's just really simple. It's dangriffin.com. And they can reach me through there, get on my newsletter, whatever. The Center for Healthy Masculinity.org. That's our website with my amazing partner, Dr. Jordan Smith. And he's the executive director of CHM, the Center for Healthy Masculinity. And then I'm on all the socials, usually at author Dan Griffin. And then we also have either the Center for Healthy Masculinity or Instagram, I believe, is Center for Healthy Masculinity for some reason. Uh, but I still don't quite get social media. So that's a
You're
whole.
crushing it. Every time I log on since I followed you, it's like a post after post, and it's pertinent information. So thank you for
Thank
what
you,
you do.
thank you.
You're
It
using the
feels
platform for good. It's awesome.
well. I appreciate that. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for this conversation. And yeah, we all need to do a lot more checking in on each other and ourselves. So appreciate it.
Thank you for that. Appreciate you.